Serious, eerie towns, disappearing diners, and creepy gas stations. What's your true, unexplained story of being in a place that shouldn't exist? Episode 2. Many years ago, my family and I moved from California to Nebraska. I was still a young kid, probably 5 to 6 years old. We were driving through Nevada and shortly after Las Vegas, and we needed to stop and fuel up. We stopped at your typical old school gas station that rings when you pull up to the pump. I don't remember it that well, but my dad told me it looked normal. He got out to stretch while my mom went inside to pay for gas. My mom said that when she walked in, the gas station had quite a few people inside, despite us being the only car there. When she walked up to the counter to pay for gas, everyone turned to her and the lights went out. She ran outside, where my dad witnessed everything and helped her into the car, and we sped off down the interstate, not caring whether we ran out of gas or not. To this day, my mom says that's one of her scariest encounters because she can't explain nor figure out exactly what was going on. And yes, we found a better gas station down the road and made it to Nebraska. I was coming home from Tennessee to North Carolina around Thanksgiving back when I drove a diesel car. I had forgotten to get fuel before I left Knoxville and didn't realize I was low until after I had passed through Dandridge and was starting to get into the mountains. I was a little worried, because sometimes it's hard to find diesel pumps for cars, and this was pre-3G for me, so I couldn't just Google one. I was driving along, looking for an exit that had a diesel gas sign and pulled off on the first one I saw. I followed the sign's directions, for what felt like forever, and eventually, I ended up on a gravel road going up a mountain. I was just getting ready to stop and turn around when I came to the top, and there was the gas station. It was one of the old style ones where you paid inside, and the numbers flipped, but it had diesel, so I was excited. I went in to pay, and it was like walking into the 80s. They had all the normal stuff, but the candy and soda had the old style logos like from when I was a kid, and they had Mars bars, which I swear were discontinued years before this. The cashier was this really sweet old man, and he gave me directions for getting back on the highway, and I got home without incident. I told my husband about it when I got home, and he wanted to stop there on our way back at Christmas so he could get a Mars bar, but no matter how many times we've looked, we've never been able to find that exit again. It was so weird, because that was literally the only thing I saw the entire time I was off the highway, and you had to drive so far to get there. But if they were ghosts, they were nice ghosts, so thanks. Had a very similar, yet different experience in a gas station in Nevada. Driving through a small town with cars parked all over the place, but hardly any townspeople to be seen anywhere. Businesses were closed, and the town was basically silent. My parents stopped and filled the car with gas while my little brother and I went into the convenience store to get some snacks. We get some candy bars and head up to the register. We're waiting for my dad to come inside to pay for the gas as well as our snacks when I ask the guy something along the lines of, "What's going on in this town? Where's everybody at?" To which he responds, "I don't know. I just got here today." At this point, my dad comes in to pay, and asks the clerk how much he owes him. The clerk responds, "I'm not sure. You can just take it." We booked it out of the creepy town with free gas and free candy without seeing a single other person. The only hint of other life was a bunch of junk cars parked throughout the town. I was driving with a group of friends in northern Arizona to head up to Zion National Park. We took a wrong turn, and we were on some empty highway in the Indian reservation area in the middle of the night. I needed some gas, so we pulled into this empty gas station, and I started pumping the gas. It was then, when everyone was getting out, that we looked at the store and realized that it seemed abandoned. We walked up to it and saw that all the lights were off, the windows were partially boarded off, and the inside of the store was a mess. Suddenly, a large truck pulled into the gas station and parked right next to my car. A man walked out and said to us, "If you need some gas, there is a station just a few more miles up the road." I look over, and the machine is pumping my gas just fine, so I say that we are fine when he says, "This place has been closed for quite some time," and gets back into his truck and drives away. I'm pretty sure I filled my car with cursed burial ground gas. This stuff is no joke. In February 2018, I was driving down US East Coast to FL with my friend, my 2 young boys, and teenage stepson. We were running low on gas, approaching maybe 5 a.m. somewhere in Virginia. Everyone else is asleep. I remember seeing signs for Richmond within the hour, but I figured I should pull off now to fill up. So, I get off the interstate and pull into a gas station just off the exit. Immediately, I realize something is off. It's just way too busy for this spot in the middle of literally nowhere at an hour that barely qualifies as the morning. As I rounded the pumps, which had a few cars staged in front of them to make them look like they were being used, I realized that there were no actual pumps at the station. It has the look of pumps set up, but no actual pumps on the pillars. Suddenly, about half a dozen people start coming out from the cars, the store, and I'm pretty sure just the general woodwork. They were all focused on the grandma van I was driving. It is, in fact, grandma's, and began to rapidly approach the van from all directions. Needless to say, we noped the fuck out of there. I drove for almost 40 miles after the gas light went on until I saw the safety of an actual town with noticeable lights and a gas station with real customers after the sun had broken the horizon. My navigation system ignored the route I had selected to go around the mountains and instead took me through them. Being unfamiliar with both potential routes and pitch black outside, I didn't notice I had been led astray until a deer came bounding out of the trees alongside the road. At that point, it was too late to turn back, and as I had no cell reception, I decided to just follow the road until signs listed places I knew. Eventually started running low on gas, and I started to panic, not knowing how far to the next station, and having no way to call for assistance. Finally, a gas station appeared up ahead, so I decided that I absolutely had to stop there. Old school place with no card readers, and a style of pump I'd never seen until then. Went inside the building to find an attendant, only to find that the place was not like a usual convenience store or station, but more of a bar with gas pumps outside. The window for the attendant in the hallway was totally dark, with no one there. So, I walk a little further in and find the bar situation. I flagged down the bartender and explained I was trying to buy gas, but he didn't really say anything at all, just took my card and ran it. As I was standing there, I felt like I was being stared at by at least half the patrons in the bar, which in total had about 50 people in it. That alone was shocking, considering this was the middle of nowhere, with no houses or cabins or businesses nearby anywhere. Got back out to the car and pumped the gas when I realized that I had the only car there. No idea where all those people inside had come from or how they got there. Too weird for me, and I just jumped back in the car and got out of there. I still have no idea where I was aside from somewhere off that route through the mountains or any idea how those people could have been there, considering the dense forest with no nearby town and no routes branching off the road I was on. A buddy and I were driving from San Antonio to Houston, and at some point, closer to SA, we pulled off the highway to get some drinks and snacks or whatever. It was like a ghost town that we drove into. We had to go through quite a bit of town before we found a gas station, and when we went in, we didn't see anyone. We walked towards the back down this hallway behind the actual convenience store area, and it opened up into this back store area where a guy was standing behind a counter. He acted like he wasn't surprised at all to see us there. We got our snacks and left. Quickly. The drive back out of that town was the same. Didn't see anyone or any cars on the road. There was some fog that day, so it looked eerie as hell. We were happy to get back on the highway. A couple years ago, a buddy and I got turned around on a side road in rural North Missouri. I had no service for GPS, and it was pouring rain, so I headed south toward my destination, hoping to run into the main highway. We ended up coming into the town of Skidmore, Missouri. It's a tiny town in the middle of nothing, but there's something dark about that place. Infamously in the 80s, a man known as the town bully was killed in broad daylight in the middle of town there. Not one person spoke up about who killed him, and it's never been solved despite many witnesses. There have also been disappearances, and a brutal crime a few years ago involving a baby being cut out of a woman's womb. Keep in mind this is a town of only 270 people. As we drove down the main drag, several people gave us a blank but intimidating stare, completely unnerving. Once we got out of the town, my buddy mentioned he'd had a sense of impending doom or danger as we drove through. Weirdly enough, I'd been feeling the same way. I'd never had such a persistent gut feeling of danger like that before. We agreed to never ever go through Skidmore again. There's something seriously evil about that town, it shouldn't exist. We used to go driving down the remote county roads that didn't even appear on Google Maps. One road, in particular, had a bunch of urban myths associated with it because there was this very backwoods family that lived there. They looked very abnormal with tons of rumors attached to them, inbreeding being the main one, and their property was seriously something out of a horror movie. Multiple run-down and collapsed trailers, broken down cars, kids playing in the road at all hours of the night. It was terrifying when you would go driving by there late at night because A, it was in the middle of nowhere, B, you had no cell service and couldn't even find the road most of the time, and C, you had to pass through flood areas, a condemned bridge basically made of planks, and miles of cornfields. What made it 1,000 times scarier is that eventually, too many people started going by and messing with the family like high schoolers would, shooting fireworks off in their yard and speeding away, etc., that sometimes the family would actually chase people away. My friends had an experience where they drove by multiple times, and one of the family members hid in a ditch and actually popped up and shot their tires out. Absolutely insane. I personally only went by there a few times, but I never experienced anything other than pure creepiness. We took some of my roommates in college one time because they were all from a bigger city and didn't believe places like this actually existed. We went through all of the creepy stuff and scared them pretty good, but when we pulled up to the house, we slowed down and looked around. It was about midnight, but for some reason, there was a fire going out back. We sat there for a few minutes looking around from the road when all of a sudden, a guy stood up next to the fire. We had no idea he was even sitting there, but he had clearly seen us the whole time. We sped out of there, obviously. I guess the only thing that makes it even weirder is that years later, I started having a conversation with my mom about all the dumb things my friends and I used to do in high school, and I mentioned this place to her, thinking that she would think it was stupid. She actually ended up saying, "Oh yeah, I remember those people from when I was in high school." So, apparently, the rumors might have had some truth to them, or at least the stories stuck around for multiple generations. In my senior year high school in rural Maryland, my 4 friends and I decided to go looking for an asylum built in the 40s, no longer in use since the 70s. We know this, it is around Avalon Street, it runs parallel to train tracks that diverge from Avalon, and when a stream crosses the tracks, you've found it. Some Stranger Things looking area. Now, this is 16 years ago, so 2 of us have flip phones, 3 have mag lights, absolutely 0 internets. So we find tracks, and we hear a stream. Follow, and come upon a very large retirement center. Obviously not it, so we take the stream under the railroad and follow the tracks. We go for about a full 2 miles, looking into the woods every few feet with the mag lights to catch anything, which sure enough, glass panes reflect our beams, but we are a full hour gone from Avalon Street. In the middle of the woods along these train tracks that have fallen trees in the middle. But whatever glass surface is reflecting our flashlights is substantial. We then find a walkway with 5 cement stairs and a railing, leading to whatever building is directly off the track, covered in woods. It is a 4-bedroom house, with a 1,960 Studebaker in the garage, in dilapidated condition, with 0 entrance and exit paths for a vehicle. Right smack off railroad tracks, we've been walking for 50 minutes. Nothing anywhere but trees and tracks. So we go in. It is set up like a 70s house in horrid conditions, but the table is set. The furniture is clean. The roof is caved in only over the far living room, only about 4 feet, but other than that, fully intact house. There are snakes living in bowls that have collected stormwater on top of the fridge in the kitchen, where we entered first, so we go downstairs, terrified. Spider webs are all over us. Every step we take, we step through several webs. We are looking for snakes and listening for people, because the house is shitty but in no way 30 years abandoned in rainy Maryland, shitty. My girlfriend opens the freezer down the steps, and the light is still on, frosty air pours out, and a single pink birthday cake with bite marks is in the center of the fridge. We ran out, thinking since the power was still on, there was a chainsaw-yielding inhabitant nearby. But the craziest thing was this, the 2 people who had flip phones, who never took them out of their pockets. The phones took 20 to 30 blank black photos between 12:30 to 1 a.m., when we were in the house. Closed, in their pockets. Returning from vacation, our city and surrounding area had gone through its almost annual catastrophic flooding. One of the only ways back into town was to go way south and come back up. We were going through a town about an hour south of us that I had never heard of and have never heard of since. It was just one street, a couple of houses, and maybe one business. The whole place was falling apart, and for some reason, just about everyone who could live there was walking around outside and looking at our car, even though it was nighttime. I also remember seeing at least 3 amputees out of that crowd. It was every horror stereotype. I'm glad it was small enough to drive through in under a minute because yikes.